And once again, a couple minutes late, so I'm very sorry about that, but I hope everybody watching this is doing well. Please take a moment, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Oh, geez. I just noticed I got like a ding on my laptop. Well, hopefully it doesn't affect anything. Let me know how it's going. Jump in the chat, say hello, and let me know what you want to talk about when it comes to Freemasonry. Any thoughts you have, positive, negative, or neutral? We got some hearts. I wonder if that might be Smokey in there, jumping in. Today's question is going to be, can Freemasonry do big things? You could even argue, you can make that question more broad, can we as a society still do big things? How's it going, Smokey? About 2 weeks away, then we're going to have our awesome joint live stream on August 29th. So I guess a week and 2 weeks away, I guess. Let me know how it's going, how you're doing. Evening, Dylan. I hope you're doing well also. Thank you for being here as well. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Give me a couple minutes to jump in the chat, write some stuff down. I had a fun stream yesterday, although it got super hot in where I was streaming, and I couldn't turn the air conditioning on because it's noisy. So I was sweating up a storm during, I guess, this morning's the 1 a.m. live stream. But now we are here, rocking out the 1 p.m. live stream, and the question is, can Freemasonry still do big things? I'm going to talk about what I mean by big things and all that. I'm sorry about that. On behalf of Canada, I apologize. I know it's really bad in Manitoba, right? It's been Manitoba, New Brunswick. A lot of these places are, there's just tons of snow. Or tons of smoke. Usually tons of snow in Canada. Tons of smoke coming from especially northern Manitoba and the maritime provinces. So as always, the first little bit, I'm just going to hang out, wait to see who joins. And then the second hour or so is when I will actually switch over and start talking about specific topics. In this case, the question, can Freemasonry still do big things? And you could argue, you could ask the question more general, can society still do big things? So hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, etc., etc. For now, though, let's wait. Let's see who joins. No specific topics for the first little bit. Just see who joins. Raised eyebrow, how are you doing? I hope you're doing well also. Yesterday, at one point, my stream cut out. I don't know why, but I'm hoping that doesn't happen again today. If it does, take me 1 second and I'll get back on, I promise. But raised eyebrow, how are you doing? Good, EA Freemason. I'm happy that your proficiency is coming along so well. It's a lot of work, I know, and everybody kind of goes at their own pace, so don't rush it. It's fine. Just enjoy the process. Nice. What's the presentation that you're working on? What is the, like I said, what's the, oh, geez. That sounds like a fun time. And I feel like in New York, uh, there's probably a lot of kind of nuances to that, because I understand street vending is kind of huge business in New York. Whenever I think of New York, I always think of like hot dog carts, street vendors. I feel like it's probably like $1 million industry over there. Um, so I can only imagine. Interesting enough, recently, just to help out with my Masonic responsibilities, I got my food vendor certificate. I think I talked to you about this, Raised Dyer, my food vendor certificate here in Ontario. Oh, geez. Then Smokey and Courtney, what are you guys doing here? If your wife isn't feeling well, take care of her. Don't be here with me on the stream. I mean, I'm all for people making some family sacrifices for Freemasonry. Um, but when it comes to this stream, don't be sacrificing time taking care of your wife to be on this stream, especially because, for all I know, if you spend too much time with me and not enough time taking care of your wife, I'll be in trouble, and your wife might come and find me. Okay, good. Well, then tell your wife. So your wife saw me. You heard what I said, Smokey's wife. I told him to take care of you first and not hang out with me. So I don't get in trouble. That's the point, right? He can get in trouble, but I don't get in trouble. And I hope you feel better. And one way to feel better is to like and subscribe to the podcast. That's very kind of you, EA Freemason. That's very kind of you, Courtney. Thank you for the prayers to her. What's up, that taco guy? I hope that you are doing well. Thank you for joining. As I was saying, today's topic, can Freemasonry still do big things? We're talking about what that means. But that is usually about an hour in, give or take. The first bit, it's mostly just me hanging out and seeing who's joining. Are there connection problems right now? Can you guys see me? There were connection problems yesterday. Which affected the stream or I guess today, this morning, 1 a.m. 1 a.m. this morning. There was, for about 10 minutes, we lost the stream. It came back, but if that happens again, let me know. That is good, Smokey. Tell her I say thank you. Greece, welcome, Greece. Thank you for being here. I truly appreciate it. I don't know if I've had anybody on from Greece before. It's wonderful to have you join. There's actually a lot of Freemasonry in Greece, which I should study it more because I don't know a lot about it. I'm doing well, Marco. How are you doing? By the way, as of right now, I do not know of any Freemasons or Masonic lodges who are being affected by the wildfires in either St. John's, Newfoundland, Manitoba. But if you do, or anybody knows of any Masons, Masonic lodges that are being affected by the wildfires at all, please let me know, as well as any Masonic relief efforts as it relates to those wildfires. When it comes to having natural disaster relief efforts, Freemasons are often at the forefront. They were a major supporter of relief efforts during the Texas floods, as well as the Los Angeles wildfires before that, as well as previous fires in Canada, United States. So, I don't know of any right now in Newfoundland, but if I learn of any, I will let people know. So mason jars, somebody was asking if the name Mason came from the Freemasons for mason jars. They do not. Actually, the inventor of the mason jar was a fellow by the name, whose last name was Mason. So the jar is named after him. I had always thought that, I never knew where it came from, to be honest. So yeah, it came from the name of the inventor, not Masonic. Yes, the like button is free, as are hearts. Thank you, Smokey. How can I become a member? Always a question I enjoy getting. The old, the old answer is always the best. To be one, ask one. So if you have or know of any Masonic lodges within your area, the way you join is you approach them and ask them about joining. But honestly, Marco, at the start, I wouldn't even think about it in terms of becoming a member. Think about it just in terms of wanting to get more information and learn more about what Freemasonry is, and approach them that way. You don't want to start with, don't start by trying to be a member right away. Start instead by just trying to learn more about the brothers, learn more about the lodge, all of that jazz. That to me is the key. A lot of guys try to join right away and they try to rush the process. Get to know the brothers. Get to know the people that you're going to be spending time with. You don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're rushing to join and you're not getting to know the people first. It makes a better experience for everybody. At least in my experience. Actually, I'm going to change this poll question for a second because I think, although 8 votes all saying yes, that's pretty cool. Can society still do big things? I'm going to talk about what I mean by that in a second. In the meantime, though, as always, take the advice of Smokey and take the advice of Courtney. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Let me know how it's going, and let me know if you have any questions, thoughts on Freemasonry, positive, negative, or neutral. I'd love to hear them. Interesting. We got 3 votes for yes, 1 vote for no. To the people who said yes and the 1 person thus far who said no, let me know why you're thinking, why you answered either yes or no. And everybody else, I'm hoping you'll vote. But I do think this is one is downstream from the other. If people think that society can no longer do big things, quote unquote, then one of the consequences is Freemasons are probably more than likely to believe that Freemasonry cannot do big things either. So I think that there is a connection between this, right? Freemasonry is downstream of culture, right? A lot of conservatives like to say politics is downstream of culture, which I don't know if that's true or not. But certainly, I think what's 100% the case that Freemasonry is downstream from culture. And as cultures change, or the culture changes, so too does things Freemasonry can and can't do. Haven't heard about any Freemasons having trouble in Manitoba with the wildfires, apart from those who are having trouble breathing. Which I'm hoping you're not one of them, Dad, but I know, not saying you're old, but as people get older, one of the issues they sometimes face is, in fact, trouble with air quality. It affects them to a greater degree. So I hope that you are doing okay and managing to, not find yourself dealing with too much smog or issues in that sense. But as always, one thing I'm always looking for is to what extent, um, or anytime Freemasons are engaged in any type of social supports, helping people, charitable endeavors, disaster relief, I always like to know. Um, I always like to know what's happening so I can promote it, support it, encourage others to donate and support to it as well. We're going to be going live together on August 29th. August 29th at 12 p.m. on my personal YouTube channel, youtube.com/Cameron Adamson. So that is going to be a lot of fun. As you know, I mean, I guess I should go through it again. I keep on promoting this because, I just want to get as many people out as I can for some of these. August 16th, 12 p.m. to 2 p.m., live streaming from the Windsor Hip Hop Festival. That's going to be a blast. August 20th, 3 p.m. to 6 p.m., we're going to be having our Instagram live stream. Going Insta Live. I've never done that before, but I think it might be kind of fun to give it a shot. We'll see if anybody joins me from 3 to 6 on Instagram. And then on the 21st, starting at 2 p.m., going for 24 hours, we are going to be rocking out a 24-hour live stream. I'm going to be showing off all of my Masonic items and pins, coins, all that good jazz that I've collected over the years. I've got a lot. I've been very, very lucky to be able to travel. I've got a ton of really cool and really special memorabilia, which I cannot wait to share with everybody. Good. I'm glad you're not having trouble, Dad. And yeah, just be safe and avoid, breathing in too much smoke, I guess. So that is my concern as well, Smokey. I think, that is my issue as well. I think the extent for us to be able to do big things really is dependent on our ability to come together as a society. And it becomes a double-edged sword. We don't believe we can do big things, so we don't come together as a society. We don't come together as society, which means we can't do big things, which makes us less desirous to come together. Like, it snowballs in on of itself, right? It's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, or a self-defeating prophecy in some ways you could describe it as. But I think potentially it's possible for us to change. At least I hope. But that is my concern as well. That is true. Who says Masons can't do big things? 24-hour live stream, I guess you could call that a big thing. Though, there are plenty of Masons out there doing some great stuff on social media, to their credit, so. I think they call it, like, the term is now not even downward spiral. They call it, like, doom spiral nowadays, right? Where it's like, yeah, that's the spiral is one of those things where once you start with a certain idea or certain thought, you just kind of carry on that way, or carry on with that pattern. And it's really hard necessarily to know how to solve it, but I think it's worth exploring. That's a very... Well, I'm trying to do big things. I hope to do big things. Why exist if you can't do big things, right? That's a really good point, though. Raised eyebrow. It doesn't have to be necessarily our humility per se. I don't know if you were here for my discussion on Moneyball, the movie. One of the lines in that movie, right near the end of it, is what's the line? he hit a home run but didn't even know it. The idea that actually, more often than not, we do have successes, we do hit home runs, but we're not aware of them. Um, we don't actually pay attention or know about them in advance, or we don't realize the successes we're having. And I do think that is the case sometimes. I certainly think that's the case with us in society, where very often all the great things that we are doing in society we don't realize, or at least we don't realize um, the full extent of how good things are, right? Until we have some sort of crisis. We take things for granted. So sometimes I think we do hit home runs and are not even aware of it. I don't know if maybe anybody in the chat wants me to include or wants to write down, an example of a time where they accomplished something big or hit a home run, but were not aware of it and only found out after the success that they had had. That's very, very true as well. Sometimes we get afraid of the reach of our actions, right? So just like you said, we don't do them. I would very much like society to stop being stupid as well. Unfortunately, that's a very hard, that's a very hard, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a very hard, piece of advice to implement. I wish I could just go outside with a sign that said "Stop being stupid," but I feel like that would not give people enough of an actionable item to pursue. Rosalie says, yo, Rosalie, how's it going? What's my Masonic home run? So the one that I often return to is January 19th and January 20th of 2024, which I was told was the largest gathering of Freemasons in Ontario outside of the annual communication. It was a really, really special 2 days for me. It took a ton of work, as well as getting all of the grant funding for the Windsor Masonic Temple. I wasn't just me alone by any means, but the amount of grant funding I got to do work on the temple was huge, and I really loved it. But for me, I think Mr. Keeps on Ticking, the other thing is, the when I say home run but didn't know it, it makes me think, are there things in my Masonic career that were home runs, that were a great success, that I wasn't aware of, or I'm not aware of how well it went, and maybe I'll learn later, right? Like, for example, if you ever had, Keeps on Ticking, an example of a success you had in your life that you didn't realize was a success until much later. Like, at the time you didn't think anything of it, but later you learned it actually was a home run. That's kind of what I'm super interested in. Challenger. Well, I hope that you don't unite against Freemasonry. I'm hoping that Freemasonry can actually help make sure there are no end times, but that we make it past a great filter, or the great filter. But I hope you're doing well. Let me know how you're doing, Challenger. Let me know if you have any questions about Freemasonry. And I can try to answer them as best as I can. I understand you're not a fan of it. That's fine. You don't have to be. But I would love to know what, maybe why you have your thoughts on Freemasonry. Or what what it is that makes you believe, what it is about Freemasonry, or what you've seen about Freemasonry that makes you think it, religious people will unite against it, especially when the vast majority of Freemasons are themselves religious, or at least claim to be religious. How actually religious there are is kind of a personal test. But I know many Freemasons who, religiously, pun intended, religiously attend their church, their mosque, their synagogue, their religious and cultural practices. It's okay, Smokey. I don't mind Challenger having negative views of Freemasonry. That's why we're here. It's perfectly fine. So long as he's not threatening me with violence, that's okay. And if he wants to try to show me what time it is when the time comes, I assume he means engage with me in a healthy debate. Hello, Ryan. How's it going for you? I hope that you are doing well. It looks like we still have 1 no vote and 6 yes votes for Can Society still do big things. So at least that means there's a lot of positive views on what society can do, whether or not Freemasons can do big things as well. We'll talk about that shortly. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate that. I'm not sure if Michelle's using the new coffee or not yet, but I'm sure it was a great coffee club as always, and I know Michelle's doing a great job as we've got the trucks passing. I do hope everybody, though, is having a great time. Please jump in the chat, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, answer the poll question, and let me know what it is that you guys want to chat about when it comes to Freemasonry. Like I said, in about, I don't know, half an hour or so, we'll start on the day's topic. You know what? Chicken butt. Yes, indeed. I used to do that all the time, too. Oops. I don't think he's a troll, Smokey. I don't think Challenger is a troll. I think, for me, a troll is somebody who says things not out of any particular belief, but rather just because they like the idea of getting a rise out of somebody. So, for example, they'll go onto a stream full of, people who are, let's say, white nationalists, and they'll say, African Americans make America great. And then they'll go on a stream of like progressive or people on the left, and they'll say something like, America is a white nationalist country. They'll just say, they don't have any particular beliefs or point of view. They just say whatever they believe will get a rise out of anybody else. Or they say things that are, they swear, they curse, they make remarks not out of any particular belief, but just because they want to get a rise out of somebody and they think it's funny. Well, he's definitely wrong, Smokey. I think he's definitely incorrect. Whether he's, sometimes smart people get fooled by propaganda, especially propaganda online. It can be easy, especially if he's having trouble in his life, if he's having challenges. Who knows what's going on with him? And maybe he's searching for somebody to blame. Or a conspiracy to help make him feel better about, maybe things in his life that are not so great. But I don't think he's a troll because, he seems to be coming at it from a pretty consistent point of view. And he's not saying things, like he's not swearing or saying racist stuff or saying stuff that like will flag YouTube or cause problems for the channel. So... which I don't mind. Like I said, no, Ryan, you're not a troll. You're not foolish either. You're a good dude. It's a Challenger, right? I think Challenger just genuinely believes that Freemasonry is negative for society. I think he's wrong. He is wrong, but I appreciate him being on here anyways. I just wish he'd provide me a little bit more context for his statements so I can respond to them more directly. Because it's hard to respond I agree. It is the opposite. And I think most people kind of understand that to a certain extent. But, so what I'd say, Smokey the Clown, when you say he's just stupid, have you ever seen, and I've talked about it on the stream before, have you ever seen a movie called Bug, B-U-G, Smokey? Well, Johnny Rockwell has another way to deal with Smokey. You first. I'm not interested. But have you, or anybody watching this, ever seen Johnny Rockwell as well? Ever seen this movie called Bug, B-U-G? It starred Ashley Judd. Okay, first, awesome, because I feel like nobody has watched that movie, and it's one of my favorites of all time. It's a massively underappreciated movie, so I'm happy that you saw it. You wouldn't call, even though based on the way they were acting, you wouldn't call, at least in my opinion, you wouldn't call Ashley Judd or Michael Shannon, Agnes or Peter in the movie. You wouldn't call them stupid, right? I mean, in the case of Peter, I think it was mental illness manifesting in some very dangerous ways and harmful ways. And in the case of Agnes, it was, she was lonely, she was isolated, she had drug problems, she was, she had PTSD from being the victim of spousal abuse, and she was struggling with guilt over the fact that her child had been abducted. And in both cases, all of these traumas and issues led them to, acting in a way that was very, very stupid and very harmful. But they were not stupid or harmful themselves. Now, you could argue that they did not take the proper steps to care for themselves, which is 100% true. And they do have some responsibility. They had a responsibility to try to make better choices than they did. But I think it's a warning sign as well that there are people who are struggling out there. And unfortunately, sometimes the pathway that the struggle takes them down is really harmful to themselves and really harmful to others. So whenever I see somebody struggling and having what I would say is very, very stupid ideas, I try to think about the pathway and the struggle that may have led them to that place. It's on, you could probably rent it on TV, BUG from 2006. It came out. And I think, it's funny, it came out in 2006, but I think in a lot of ways it was a warning for what society was moving towards as we became more atomized. I think in a lot of ways, more people needed to take what that movie was saying a little more seriously. But how many people struggle the way Agnes and Peter do in that movie and don't get help? Well, I appreciate that, Smokey. That's very kind of you. Although, again, he'd have to find me first, and I don't know if he wants to travel, I don't know if he wants to travel to Canada. But I do hope everybody watching this is doing well. Please take a moment, hit the like and subscribe button. We are here to talk about Freemasonry. We're going to be asking the question, can Freemasonry still do big things? Which is connected to the question of, can society still do big things? So please jump in the chat. Let me know what you think. And let me know how it's going. That's true. There is a ton of smoke. So, maybe stay inside. Plus, your wife is sick, you're saying, right? So you got to stay with her. You got to focus on her, right? Don't worry about me. Welcome. If you're just joining us, please jump in the chat, say hello. We are here chatting about Freemasonry, so any thoughts you have on it, positive, negative, or neutral, please let me know. We're going to ask the question, can Freemasonry still do big things? And if you have any other questions, please let me know. Any thoughts on Freemasonry? It's wonderful to have so many people joining. We got 11 people watching, but just 6 likes. So what are you waiting for? Hit that like button. You know, if we can get 6, we can get 11 people watching. We get more than 6 likes. Nice to see a more positive view, though, on the poll question. Can society still do big things? We've got yes at 88%, no at 1 vote so far. There you go. So, you know, Smokey being a little bit more pessimistic than the rest. I mean, I would say I'm somewhat more on the negative side myself, or the pessimistic side. I try not to be. I do find in some ways Freemasonry helps me not be as pessimistic as I would be otherwise. But pessimism is definitely and pessimism can be a very comforting feeling, because if you're pessimistic and you're right, then it's like, you know, you were right anyways. You're pessimistic, and you know, sometimes it's like assume the worst, so if it happens, you can, you know, feel better. Oh, so I would describe myself as a capitalist, but with you know, so when I was younger, I was hardcore capitalist in my younger days. You know, almost to the point of libertarian. Now that I've gotten a bit older, I've definitely moved more to the left. I feel like in some ways I haven't. I feel like conservatives have moved more to the right. But I would say as a general rule, I support capitalism, so long as you have some basic protections, or basic services are provided. So, for example, I believe in capitalism, but I also believe in a single payer healthcare system. Well, I mean, you got to define capitalism, right? That's the trick, right? I mean, if you define capitalism as, you know, everybody basically survives on their own to the point that, you know, everybody gets their own private fire insurance, and you do away with the public fire department, then I don't know if anybody's capitalist, but it seems like a lot of people define it that way. So it's just, what are the areas that a government can and should regulate or try to, you know, try to have a hand in, versus what are the areas where they shouldn't. So, you know, how you define these things gets kind of tricky. I guess what I'd say is, as a general rule, my preference for society is that before anybody needs to look at government support, they should be able to look at friend and family and community support. Which is one of the reasons why I love Freemasonry, is that it gives people, first and foremost members, but also not members, friends, family, and even people just in the community. It gives people a place to go to get support before they maybe need to rely on government or social services. Let's not fire the fire department. I like the fire department. I don't want to fire the fire department. If there's a fire in my place, please come and get me. I would very much appreciate it. I could, you know, use the help. So this person does not speak for me if any firemen are watching or fire people are watching. That is true. People are different. That's what makes them interesting. I mean, I think the best type of world would be a world in which everybody was exactly like me and agreed with me. It'd be a much more handsome world. I mean, could you imagine a world of nothing but Camerons walking around? You would, at least male Camerons, and then, we need women too. But if everybody thought like me and looked like me, oh my gosh, it would be a good-looking world full of incredibly intelligent people. I can tell you that right now. I don't know if you get. I mean, maybe some of them can look like Smokey because he's a handsome fella too, I'm sure. So, like, we'll get Smokey in there as well, just to mix it up a bit. But it's everybody looking like me or Smokey. The world would be too handsome for people to handle. Like, if aliens came down and saw a world of nothing but Cameron and Smokey, oh my gosh. The aliens would never want to leave. Listen, Smokey, I'm not going to literally sit here, and listen to you say such things about yourself. You are a handsome, handsome fellow. Right? Everybody put 100 in the chat if you think Smokey's a handsome fella. Or if you want to say he's ugly and proud of it, there you go. That counts too. Yes, Courtney is handsome. So let's go with a world full of people who look like me, Courtney, and Smokey. There'd be too much handsomeness to handle. Dad, sorry, you're an ugly fellow. I gotta say that because you're my dad, so I have to make fun of you. It could just be that you're old. That's the issue, right? It could just be that you're just very old. I'm sure you were a handsome fella back in your day when you were rocking out your long hair, which for some reason, when I was a kid, when I was younger, I really wanted long hair. My mom wouldn't let me, and my argument in favor of it was, Dad growing up had long hair, but it never worked. My mom never let me get long hair, no matter how much I asked for it. And now that I'm older, and I want to get long hair, I'm too lazy to grow it out. I don't know what Pop Adamson means, but I like pop. If you're talking about pop music or pop the cola. All right, let's give it another couple minutes. I think I'm going to do is, so we're at 43 minutes now. Maybe when I get to 50 minutes, I will, maybe 5-10 minutes, I'll start on the subject. And I do have a great article from Forbes to read first. Why can't we do big things anymore? This was written by Michael S. Malone. This was from December 16th, 2010. Updated August 11th. So consider that. People were already bemoaning our inability to do big things as a society in 2010. Right? That was during Obama's second term? No, first term. Feels like it was a century ago. Okay, I get it now. I was thinking Pops. Yes, Harry Adamson is in the stream. Otherwise known as Harry. So, which is a funny name for a man who is presently bald, though growing, as a teenager, he grew his hair long. I was never allowed to have long hair, but, he could. I hope everybody, once again, though, is doing well and having an excellent, excellent day. Here's a better one. The progressive paradox, why America can't do big things. I may read this one as well in a second. Well, so I guess we can blame the Beatles. I'm just saying, my mom never wanted me to get long hair, so, you know, for whatever it's worth, I don't see why I couldn't get long hair. Not that I'm still bitter about it at all. Well, as you should, handsome man. Yes, you're older. I know, so that affects how handsome you are. I'm sorry that you're not as young and handsome as I am, but you're still handsome nonetheless. Well, my birthday is coming up, so yes, buy me some coffee, Dad. Coming up in about a month, which is crazy to think how fast time. Speaking of. Okay, there it is. I was like, where did I put my coffee? Unfortunately, well, I mean, Mr. Keeps on Ticking. Don't get me wrong. I love the coffee you sent me. It was wonderful, and thank you so much. It was very kind, and it tastes delicious. But I'm not going to be too harsh on casino coffee because they do give it to me for free, as you say, scamming them. So I can't really, I can't really complain too much about it. But your coffee definitely tastes better. Well, all our birthdays are coming up. That's true, but mine is coming up in about a month. So, where's the? So you go second. You go York right, which makes sense. I wouldn't be surprised if you went cryptic. That is the second part of the York right degree system. What I would say for... Okay, I'm a Virgo too, Courtney. So you and I are both Virgos. Although, I'm going to, just to be safe, remove that comment. Just because I don't want people to put necessarily some of their personal information on the chat, like their date of birth or something. Even though you didn't put down the year or nothing, just to be safe, let's make sure that we don't put too much personal info on there. I'll share my personal info because honestly, if anybody stole my identity, they'd probably just improve my credit. But for the rest of you, Virgos, Carl. Virgos. Well, I appreciate you finding me again, Priscilla. That is very kind of you. It's wonderful to have you join. They're a cool crew. I know some cryptics. I know some York writers. They're really awesome guys. So cave meetings. I mean, cave meetings is you see that throughout Freemasonry. Honestly, you often see that a lot of times now in craft lodges where they'll have a special meeting in like an abandoned cave or abandoned mine in the woods just for something different and like a cool setting to hold a meeting. That tends to happen pretty regularly. What I would say though, Mr. Keeps on Ticking, but this is more advice for anybody watching. Okay, once again, Mr. Keeps on Ticking, I'm going to remove that comment. Not because I'm jealous, but because, your actual credit score seems a little bit too much like personal info that I wouldn't want shared. I know nobody knows your name, but just to be safe, just say you have a very good credit score. I'm sure it's better than mine. Actually, mine is okay. Mine's in the 700s. So I'll take that. I'm sorry your brother got scolded. So what did I want to say, Mr. Keeps on Ticking? Yes. What I'd say to anybody is if you want to join Freemasonry, at the start, don't think about the destination of wanting to join Scottish Rite, wanting to join York Rite, wanting to be worshipful master, whatever it might be. just at the start, think about it in terms of wanting to get your entered apprentice degree. Just start there and move forward. Because what I find a lot of guys, and I have known people who have joined, and their whole goal is to make it to, like, they want to make it to, they want to make it to 33rd degree or whatever it is. They tend to burn out quickly because they're just zooming through without taking the time to enjoy where they're at. So it's good to have kind of a goal, but it's also good to focus on the present moment as well, and not get too focused on not get so focused on where you're going that you don't take the time to enjoy where you're at, if that makes any sense. Well, I mean, that's one of the issues with quote unquote being from the hood, if you will, is like it's just the building of credit is so hard. That's why, honestly, Smokey, one of the best policy changes we could make in society, which I don't know why we don't, is finding a way to include rent payments as part of your credit score. Right? So if you're somebody who's never had a credit card, never had a loan, but you pay your rent on time every month, that should be reflected in your credit score as a way for people who don't have access to other forms of credit to build a credit score, because otherwise you're kind of forcing people to take credit cards and get loans, and that becomes a big problem. So I think my dad said he once had that issue when he moved to Canada. He didn't have a credit score, and he had to get like a credit card or something just to prove he had a credit score. Yeah, but a lot of people, again, if you are, lower income enough, you may not be able to get a mortgage or get a car loan. But again, you're paying your rent every month, and as part of that, that should count towards your credit, and that would open up opportunities for loans to a lot of people who otherwise don't have those opportunities. Good, funny Republican. I'm glad you are of an all right income. That makes me happy, I guess. Thank you for being here, by the way. I hope you're doing well. Hit that like button if you've not done so yet. How can you best prepare for... So I do, and that is one way that people can get their credit if they get a loan. But if it's just they're paying the bill, then it's not really a loan, and that won't improve their credit, right? At least in Canada, it tends to be how it works. So best prepare for the entered apprentice degree. Honestly, you shouldn't try to prepare for the entered apprentice degree. You shouldn't really... in the second and third degrees, there's what we call proficiencies, there's provings. In those cases, you have to do some preparation in terms of memorization. But for your first degree, I would say don't try to prepare, because you end up... What I've found, and this has happened to people I've known and talked to them afterwards, they try to prepare for the entered apprentice degree, and as a consequence, they're focusing so much on like what they think should happen or how they have been preparing for it to happen, that if it doesn't happen the way they expected or were prepared, they get all flustered and confused, or they're not really in the moment and enjoying it, because they're so focused on, again, what they've been learning and like their preparation, as opposed to just enjoying it. The best way to prepare for the first degree is to not prepare outside of taking the time to get to know your brothers or your soon-to-be brothers, going out for dinner with them, getting breakfast with them, getting coffee with them, just enjoying being with them, right? And if you can do all of that, that's going to be your best preparation, because part of the entered apprentice degree involves having a level of trust in those around you. That's one of the lessons of the degree. And for that, what you need to do is get to know them, right? No worries, Smokey. No worries at all. If I could move to any country in the world, which would it be? I mean, I don't want to move to any country because I love Canada, greatest country in the world. But I suppose what I do is I move to England because that's where my dad comes from. Um, and I'm actually eligible for British citizenship. I just never apply for it, but it's on my list of things to do because I think it'll be really, really fun and really cool to get my British citizenship. Because I love Britain, home of Freemasonry. England was the, foundational country for Freemasonry. It'd be fun to be a citizen therein. Um, and then third, America. Even though I have some concerns with what's happening in America right now, I've said it a million times, I'll say it a million more. Canada is the greatest country in the world because we have the greatest neighbors in the world. Um, so Canada first, but then to move England or United States. And, that's okay. To Smokey's dog, hey, we all get excited sometimes. We all, um, we all kick phones off of beds sometimes. Well, I mean, George Washington was a Freemason. It charted out of England, but I mean, the first Freemason in the United States of America would have been John Skene, a Scottish immigrant, at least according to Wikipedia. Um, Also, Free and Accepted Masons of Ohio, St. John's. Um, John Skene, a Scottish immigrant. Actually, I think I once saw his name spelled Skeene, as well as Skene. But so the first one, I mean, to America itself, just the land called America would have been 1682, New Jersey. But George Washington, he was born in Virginia, and he became a Freemason in 1752, according to AI. Sounds about right. Joined in Fredericksburg, Virginia. Probably, in my opinion, the most, of all the famous Freemasons, he's the most famous, like, for being a Freemason. Obviously, he was the first president of the United States and a general, etc., but a lot of people know of him for his Masonic works as well, compared to, let's say, Winston Churchill, who, in my opinion, was as important a prime minister as George Washington was a president. But a lot of people don't know that Winston Churchill was himself a Freemason, right? Because he wasn't as active as Washington, right? I don't know how many meetings Churchill attended. I don't think he attended that many. Whereas George Washington was famous for making sure to include Masonic activities and Masonic meetings during his presidential duties. Like if he had to travel somewhere if he had to travel somewhere on presidential responsibilities, he would stop at the Masonic lodges there as well and give some type of address or something to that effect. So he was absolutely, he was indispensable as a Mason, and one of the best ones. Well, I could be incorrect, Carl, but I think I am right based on my researches done thus far. But in fairness, I am not an expert on Masonic history by any means. I wish I could say that I was. All right, let's give it... Well, we're at the 1 hour mark now, so let's start talking about this question. Can we as Freemasons do great things? Well, you can if you want to, funny Republican. However, it's going to be considered clandestine, so be warned. You're not going to be able to advance too far. But hey, you start your group, and I wish you the best of luck. Um, so we have this article. This was written by Michael S. Malone in 2010. Um, and so the fact that this was from 2010, I think, says something as well. It says that these problems are at least 15 years old, but really, I think probably a little bit older than that as well. Uh, the recent quick fade of the Deficit Commission was the latest reminder that America no longer seems to have the stomach for big challenges. There was a time, was it just a generation ago? So that would have been the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, the 60s, when Americans were legendary for doing vast, seemingly superhuman projects. The interstate highway system, the Apollo missions, Hoover Dam, the Manhattan Project, the Normandy invasion, the Empire State Building, Social Security. What happened? Today we look at these achievements much as Dark Age peasants looked on the mighty works of the Roman Empire, feeling like some golden age has passed when giants walked the earth. Even when we can still see the aged survivors of that era sunning themselves outside the local convenience home or sitting down with us for family holiday dinner, it's hard not to believe that there was once something larger than life about them that they failed to pass on to us. The greatest generation, and those before them back to the birth of this country, seem to be able to do big things and think big thoughts in a way that is now beyond both our abilities and desires. So that greatest generation was also part of the generation that experienced the last great Masonic boom period in the 1950s, as well as somewhat probably in the tail end of the 1920s, right? Is it a surprise that the generation that brought us the interstate highway system, the Apollo missions, the Hoover Dam, the Manhattan Project, the Normandy invasions, Empire State Building, Social Security, that generation would also be the generation that participated in the Masonic boom period or the great period of Masonic growth, at least in membership? We no longer build the world's tallest buildings. When he says we, he's speaking of the United States. Other countries do. We no longer reach towards the moon. Other countries are. And when we do attempt something big, universal health care, alternative energy, improved educational standards, mass transportation, the initiative inevitably snarls up in bad planning, corruption, political payoffs, lack of leaderships, impracticality, and just sheer incompetence. The comparative tiny Lincoln administration managed to win the Civil War, open up the Great Plains through the Homestead Act, and kick off construction of the Transcontinental Railroad, all within 4 years. I don't know about that. Hopefully we can still be positive. Look at the chat or look at the poll. 90% of people are saying we can still accomplish great things. The question is, do we have the stomach to do it? Why are things so different now? Why can't we seem to do big things as well? We think there are a number of reasons, some consoling, others worrisome. So part of it is, and this is true for Freemasonry as well, big isn't big anymore. Big has, in many cases, become small. Nanotechnology, microelectronics, human genome project, distributed network, smart objects, and there's a lot more reward these days in developing smaller and more power-efficient microprocessors than in pouring 1 million yards of cement for a new dam. So perhaps much of our sense of failure in achievement is in fact merely a failure of perspective. And this goes to what I was saying earlier. How many times have we in society hit a home run and did not know it? How many times are we doing great things and are not aware of it? Right? I think, unfortunately, very often we in society are finding ourselves achieving great things, but we don't care about it, pay attention to it. The rapid growth in technology has been absolutely stunning. So, to some cases, this is a failure of perspective, and that's also an issue for Freemasonry, in that many times Masonic lodges actually do great things and do big things, but from the perspective doesn't feel that way because so much of effort and time goes into just trying to survive, however it is that they can, right? You also then have collective individualism, which is a problem for Freemasonry as well. Today's technology, which allows us to connect and communicate directly with each other, makes us less inclined to centralizing themes and collective action. Our networked world gives equal voice to every person while marginalizing intermediaries, including political parties, making it much harder to win policy consensus for really big problems. Worse, in a paradox of our times, the more connected we get, the more divided we become. The most vocal, outraged group wins. So again, we have this collective individualism, which is affecting Freemasonry as well as everything else. And I'll be back in just one moment. I need to go grab myself a pop. Everybody stay there. Don't go anywhere. I'll be back in just 1 second. I need to grab a drink. And I'm back. I'm in love with my Coke. I love my coffee, but now I got to switch over to pop, to Coke. I actually do have to stop by Coffee Club on Friday. Um, the lady who put her pictures up is um, picking up her papers once again. Or sorry, the artist is coming by to pick up her paintings, and I may have a new artist coming in to drop off some new paintings. So, I mean, you'll destroy me, I'm sure. But if you are there and you have a chess set, and if I can stay, I will stay for a couple minutes and play some chess with you. But maybe play with some other guys there too, right? But I could play a quick game with you. You'll probably destroy me in a couple minutes. Well, hopefully, Smokey, we can encourage other people to be like us, at least in some of our better qualities and some of our better angels. And then, again, according to this Forbes article, Big has... I'll need the coffee if I'm going to try to win at a chess game. Big has gotten harder. Fusion power is infinitely more complicated than internal combustion, and a laptop computer inhabits a different universe from an adding machine. Almost everything big we attempt is now much more complex and expensive than anything our ancestors could have ever imagined. On the other hand, they probably said exactly the same thing and went ahead and built it anyways. Nowism. Big projects require both patience and a belief in history. And that is true for Masonic big projects as well. Our society appears to have neither. Instant downloads, endless channels, and movies on demand have trained us to want exactly what we want, when we want it. All the forces that satisfy our consumer desires make us less able to invest in tough, unglamorous, inconvenient things, especially if they take time. And I personally think that is the biggest challenge with Freemasonry, right? To do a big Masonic project, it takes a lot of time and a lot of patience. Even for stonemasonry. I mean, there was a time when you talk about stonemasonry and stone Masonic projects, like look at the Great Pyramids, right? There was an expectation There's many times when kings have been Masons. Um, King Edward the Sixth, he was part of the King's Speech. He was the main character in the movie The King's Speech. He was the king during World War II, the father of Queen Elizabeth. He was a Freemason, um, as was the King's Man. I don't know what the King's Man is, but I'm sure there were Masons therein. It was like the Secret Service, right? It's the movies. But many kings themselves have been um, um, what was I saying? Many monarchs have been Freemasons. King Edward the Sixth, the King of England during World War II, as well as his predecessor and brother, were both Freemasons. Prince Philip, the husband of Queen Elizabeth, was a Freemason as well. So there's been many Masons who have been kings. I don't believe Prince or King Charles is, but I could be wrong. Sure, you can share that story. It'd be a lot of fun. So, as they point out in this story I'm reading, and this is about the idea of whether or not society can do big things. First of all, we are doing big new things. They just aren't like the big old things. The customer base of Facebook is now bigger than the populations of all but 2 countries in the world. We've mapped the entire human gene sequence with a few keystrokes in a Google search. We can now find almost any piece of information on the planet. We make microprocessors so small that their walls are bumpy with molecules that can perform 10 billion computations in a second. No, I will never do that, Ryan. That is gross. That said, however, the world is still a material place. The world is still a place of materials, including stone. And it is with big physical projects that we seem to be slowly losing both our competence and our nerve. Part of this is due to the loss of intellectual capital as skilled veterans of past big projects fade away. Part of it is a new economy that offers better incentives elsewhere. And part of it is a growing national aversion to physical risk, discomfort, and deferred gratification. But most of all, it is the lack of the very confidence that once made America and its leaders willing to dam the torpedoes and to charge into the future under full steam. Sure, the digital world is exciting, engaging, and quite rewarding. But someday, a whole new set of roads and canals and bridges will need to be built. Maybe on Mars, maybe on a ruined Earth. We just might want to start practicing for that day now, right? I cannot believe that to be the case. I mean, I don't even drink, and I would do vodka and orange juice before Coke and orange juice. I think Ryan's trying to play a trick on us of some sort, right? So what are the kind of some of the lessons that we see, again, in this story from 2010, so 15 years ago? Right. First, when you have a society that is far more individualistic, that is far more focused on kind of individual gratification, individual views, individual successes, and not on kind of any type of collective good, you have a less of an inclined, you are less inclined as a society to engage in big physical projects. You're more likely to engage in big technological projects on a smaller, like mass production of cell phones, mass production of social media, mass production of microchips, things that allow an individual to better connect with, the internet, as well as to find more comfort. But roads that help everybody, grand buildings that everybody can see and visit, social security, the Manhattan Project, going to the moon, those are things. Well, I sit all the time, sadly. I'm never not sitting. Right? Those are things that are ultimately for a collective good, not an individual good. The individual can benefit, but society benefits as a whole to a greater extent. As a consequence, when you have a hyper individualistic society, great projects, great big projects like, again, a road system, a railway system, expansion to the west, are less likely to find traction. And if you view Freemasonry in and of itself as a great collective endeavor, kind of by its nature, there's a collective element to it. You're joining a lodge, you're becoming part of a team. For the same reason, as we become more of an individualistic society, the less likely we are to be interested in joining, any type of group, including Masonic lodges, right? The other issue is the idea of everybody wanting to be a winner of some sort. The recruiting ad for the Pony Express said orphans preferred. The ugly fact is that the building of America cost a lot of lives by putting workers in dangerous, high-risk situations. We don't seem to have the intestinal fortitude for that kind of sacrifice anymore. And even if we did, our robust system of torts laws would make it too expensive to pursue anyway. You probably can't conquer outer space with a society that doesn't keep score in youth soccer games, hands out participation trophies, and sues for every cut and bruise. After all, the virtual bullets in a Halo gunfight don't hurt. Shoot, Mr. Keeps on Ticking. Ask away. I don't mind being sidetracked. So again, this is this example of, in a society to do big things, it requires a lot of sacrifice, hard work, time, effort, and do Freemasons have the desire to make those sacrifices in 2025, especially when a lot of, society is in this participation trophy, getting sued for every cut and bruise philosophy? Do we have the fortitude to take on a big Masonic challenge, a big Masonic project? Ryan knows, it's fine, I took the joke. Ryan's a good friend of mine, so it's cool. And that is a challenge, I think. And you could argue, is it because we're quote unquote softer in society, which I think you could make an argument for, or is it because the average Mason is so busy just trying to stay afloat, working longer hours, struggling with all of the economic challenges I've discussed previously, that the idea of adding onto that a 20-hour a week Masonic project, a Masonic project that will take several years, they're just not interested in doing that because they have so many other problems and challenges that they're facing. Right? The other thing is, big has gotten harder. Welcome back, Half Man. Well, not change rooms. Sometimes rooms will be decorated in different ways depending on the degree, but that again tends to be Scottish and York Rite, not so much Craft Lodge. I get it, Smokey. That was very funny. Big has gotten harder. Fusion power is infinitely more complicated than internal combustion. Laptop computer inhabits a different universe from an adding machine. Almost everything big we attempt is much, much more complex and expensive than anything our ancestors could have ever imagined. On the other hand, they probably said the exact same thing and did it anyways. And then Nowism. Big projects require both patience and a belief in history. Our society appears to have neither. Instant downloads, endless channels, and movies on demand have trained us to want exactly what we want when we want it. I would say Jordan Peterson, almost anybody, in the mega sphere, or not even the political sphere, but I do find more in the right wing, there's this same idea of like it's instant, right? Like I can go, if I want to hear a lecture by Jordan Peterson, I can go on YouTube and hear that lecture whenever I so desire, right? I don't have to schedule it around, I don't have to make any type of sacrifice in terms of scheduling it. I can do it at 2 in the morning, at 3 in the afternoon. Whereas with Freemasonry and big projects, there's more of an expectation that you will schedule yourself accordingly. So lodge takes place at 7:30. That's when it takes place. You don't get to ask for it to be later because, you know, you have other commitments. So technology is advancing more rapidly than ever before, but it doesn't feel like we're using it towards big things. And this is something I've talked about in the past, right? The idea that sometimes we are accomplishing big things and we don't realize we're accomplishing big things. Like what I'm doing right now, talking to people, it's a big thing. It's a huge deal. I've got people from all over the world, from Canada, from Texas, I had somebody from Greece, and I'm talking to them about the thing that I love, right? That to me is a big thing. But it's also a big thing on an individual basis in some ways. It's a big thing for me. It's not a big thing that necessarily helps, you know, millions of people. To do that, I need to rely on millions of other people to work together towards a common goal, which is very challenging. It requires commitment and sacrifice from a lot of people. It requires an acknowledgement that doing big things has gotten a lot harder. That doesn't mean it's bad. Sometimes the hardness or the increased difficulty is actually necessary to make things better. Like, for example, I don't know if raised eyebrow is still on. If you are, let me know. But as he points out, it was probably, or kind of pointed out, it was probably a lot easier in the 1920s and 30s in New York to be a street vendor and sell hot dogs, right? You could probably just go out on the street with a cart of hot dogs and start selling them and not have to worry about health inspectors or health inspections or anything like that. So it was easier, but it was also not, you know, that easiness wasn't reflected in better, because how many more people died of food poisoning in the 1920s or got sick from food poisoning in the 1920s when you had no necessity for any type of regulations or health inspections or licensing. You know, same thing with almost everything. So just because something has gotten harder, it doesn't mean that there's not a purpose behind the increased difficulty, and that doesn't mean the increased difficulty might not be necessary. I mean, I know I experienced this with my work. You know, when it came to my recent project last year with the Windsor Masonic Temple, so much of what you had to focus on was, okay, what are the building permits necessary to do this work that we want to do? What regulatory agencies and bodies need to inspect the work? What are the accessibility requirements to get the work done? What are the funding requirements to get the work done? What are, you know, the different federal, provincial, municipal agencies that are going to be watching over this restoration and renovation work? What are the safety requirements? What are the reporting requirements? You know, all of that stuff, I would guess, while it probably existed in the 1950s, existed to a much less of a degree, and it was much easier to get away with certain things, you know, in terms of building codes, building compliances. So these big projects have gotten a lot harder. However, it also means the work that is being done safer. It means less people are getting injured. It also means that the work isn't negatively affecting the community by, for example, relying on, you know, the necessity of having so much power taken for one project, you know, or the danger of building in an unsafe way that then affects the neighbors. So harder doesn't mean worse. Sometimes harder can mean better. It can also, however, sometimes mean that people are not willing to take on these big projects because it's harder. Well, they call their meeting places temples, half hawk, half man, primarily out of tradition going back to King Solomon. Freemasonry, it really borrowed um, in its ritual and ceremonies it borrowed a lot of symbolism from a lot of different um, spiritual, philosophical, mythological traditions. So, for example, it borrowed some things from ancient Chinese mythology, it borrowed some things from Egyptian mysticism, it borrowed some things from Stoicism and Stoic philosophy, and it borrowed a fair bit from biblical stories and biblical theology. And one of those things was a lot of symbolism and interpretation based on King Solomon and King Solomon's temple, which again does make sense if you consider stonemasonry as being something that advanced from, sorry, Freemasonry as being something that advanced from stonemasonry. It makes sense that, they would look towards ancient and mythological examples of, speaking of great works, great stone masonry as symbols for metaphorical and moral growth. And so King Solomon's temple became very important in our rituals, and as a consequence, a lot of buildings became known as temples for many years. Most Masonic lodges, or most Masonic jurisdictions in 2025, are trying to avoid using the term temple for exactly that reason. Um, uh, because a lot of people have the idea that that the term temple has religious connotations, and it does. It's not just an idea, and it does. A lot of jurisdictions in 2025 are encouraging changing the name of buildings to something like Masonic Convention Center, or Masonic, like the Masonic Center, or Masonic building, even, or Masonic space, like Johnstown, right? Changed it. California, they do not allow themselves to call their buildings Masonic temples anymore. They have to go by a different name for that very reason. I think that's a good thing. Like when I was applying for grants, one of the grant requirements was we're not allowed to. I just got to grab something quickly. The grant providers said we can't provide grants to religious institutions. I pointed out Freemasonry isn't religious, and the response was, well, why is it called, the Windsor Masonic Temple? And so I had to explain that, it's a traditional term. I'll be back in just 1 second. It's a traditional term. It doesn't mean that, it's actually a religious temple. That's actually not the case, Mr. Keeps on Ticking. Scottish Rite does continue this story. Again, I know that we are, Scottish Rite in Canada is Supreme Council. It kind of somewhat aligns more closely to Southern jurisdiction, though there is some, it's not a copy 100% of anything. It's its own thing. But there's continuation in the story. I can't speak to how much York Rite continues the story, but I understand both rites do continue the story. Scottish Rite is often called the University of Freemasonry. Auslander Rouse. So you can't see this. Free. You can't see this because YouTube. What's the word I'm looking for? YouTube moderated it. But Auslander Rouse said something that I do want to respond to because he's wrong, but I think it's important to respond to it nonetheless. He said, and nobody clip this and take it out of context. He said, Freemasonry, Masonic Hall, that's another term that's often used, because again, they don't want the religious connotations. So he said, Freemasonry was created by satanic Jews. Might be some trolling there. Let me know if you guys can see me well. Let me know if this angle is better than the other angle. I feel like this angle might be better. I don't know. Let me know. So Freemasonry was not created by Jewish people, nor was it created by satanic anybody. It was created as an evolution of stone masonry guilds from the Middle Ages in Europe, particularly England, as well as Scotland got some stuff in there as well. The idea that Freemasonry is satanic or that Freemasonry is a Jewish organization comes from a few different places, but primarily it came from Hitler and Nazi Germany. Again, when I talked earlier and I said Freemasonry borrows from a lot of different philosophical and religious and mythological traditions. I mentioned ancient Chinese mythology, which it does. I mentioned Egyptian mysticism, biblical theology, Stoicism. It actually borrows a fair bit from Stoicism. It also borrows from, the Kabbalah as well. Kabbalah. I can never know how to pronounce that correctly. But that doesn't mean it's Jewish. It just means no more than it means that it's, Chinese or whatever else it is. It just means it took a lot of different mythological ideas from a lot of different places and kind of mashed them together in different forms when creating some of these different ceremonial and traditional approaches. Welcome. So Auslander, I hope I answered your question or your statement and why you're incorrect. Let me know if you want to keep, talking. You're more than welcome to. Just be careful what you say. So, Johnny Thunderer. Well, they do not. So, in my experience, and again, you have to tell me what you mean by higher degrees. You're not wrong that even in the degrees I have been a part of, there is an Egyptian quality to them. But again, ancient Chinese mythology. If you get the chance, type in to your Google search, Fuxi and Nuwa, square and compass, and see what you see. That was Chinese mythology. The Bible, obviously, there's elements taken from therein. The Kabbalah, the Stoicism, and the cardinal virtues. There's a lot taken from a lot of different places. That's one of the things I love about even ancient Rome in some ways. One of the things I love about Freemasonry is the fact that it kind of it's a bit like, but I mean this in a positive way, like a dustbin of history, in that it finds itself using philosophical ideas from many different places in order to impart moral lessons, right? It's one of my I don't know if you're a fan of professional wrestling. But one professional wrestler I really enjoy goes by the name John Moxley. He's currently in AEW. And he was doing this interview, and he said, I'll take a good idea from the janitor or the hot dog vendor. When he was talking about, like, so he was offering advice on wrestling, he said, I'll take a good idea from the hot dog vendor. Freemasonry is kind of like that as well. Freemasonry will and has taken good ideas from so many different groups, and I think that's to its credit. Um, well, the orientation of the lodge, east to west, is for a few different reasons. It's not for a single reason. Solomon is a very important figure in Masonic kind of rituals or traditions. I would even call it traditions. Um, the Romans did build Hadrian's Wall. They saw those Scottish people and said, we got to get rid of these guys. Um, well, I mean, nothing was always part. The exclusive thing that was always part of Freemasonry is stonemasonry, right? That is the thing that has always and will always be a part of Freemasonry. It's stonemasonry and stonemasons and stonemason ideals. Beyond that, everything else is borrowed from other places, which again, take a good idea from the hot dog vendor, you know? And in some cases, not even, it's just parallel thinking. I mean, we're all dipping from the same well, right? We are all kind of, whatever group you belong to, at the end of the day, there's only so many different mythological, mystical, religious, philosophical, legal, scientific ideals and ideas upon which you can draw from in order to create your own organizations. So Freemasonry borrowed from many of those, and then many later organizations borrowed from Freemasonry. But, you know, there's nothing inherently Jewish or Muslim or anything. It's rather that Freemasonry, when it was forming itself, found ideas in, again, Kabbalah, Judaism, Christianity, Egyptian mysticism, Stoicism, all these different kind of traditions. Um, Dodge, jump, dive. He was, yes, Lunatic Fringe. I know Lunatic Fringe. I like him a lot. He's incredible. No Freemasonry is aligned with any political parties anywhere. If it claims to be aligned with a political party, then it is clandestine or it's doing something wrong. In fact, we in Freemasonry cannot discuss politics or religion while in lodge. So, no. Now, I'm always been happy, as many people on this stream know, to share my political opinions with people. But when I speak of my political opinions, it's exclusively my opinions and not the opinions of anybody else. Somebody asked me above if I recognize the Grand Orient. I mean, if you're talking about me personally, hey, plenty of sand in the sandbox. I have respect for anybody who joins a Grand Lodge of whatever, orientation, I guess, or whatever jurisdiction. But my Grand Lodge does not recognize the Grand Orient as a regular Masonic body. Which means if a member of the Grand Orient came to visit me, I'd welcome them, I'd sit down with them, I'd buy them a beer or buy them a coffee, but they would not be able to attend one of my Masonic meetings. But other than that, I would still consider them a brother. It's just a brother where at this point we don't have mutual recognition, so we cannot attend each other's meetings. Hello, Red Lighting. How is it going? I hope that you are doing well. To everybody watching this, Johnny, I hope you hit the like and subscribe button. Well, I mean, politics kind of has to exist by default, right? Because You got to vote for people to run the government, and they have to give their opinion. But I think the amount of time we spend talking about politics is definitely problematic. And it's one of the nice things about Freemasonry is you get a break, and when you're in the lodge, you're not talking about politics near as much. So Johnny Thunderer, I hope you hit the like and subscribe button. Ozlander, if you're still there, by all means, jump. Let me know why you think Freemasonry was created by satanic Jews. And I'll tell you why you're wrong, but I'd love to get more of your opinions on why you would think that. All right, let me go back to this discussion of, can Freemasons do big things? Cold is back. KOLD. I'm at it all the time, Cold. I am like a bad penny. I always turn up. Let me know what it is about Freemasonry that you think is satanic, and I'll tell you why you're incorrect, but I want to get your opinion. And I appreciate you being here, Cold, even though you think I'm satanic. It's worse. You think I'm a wannabe satanic Freemason. So I'm not even good enough to be a satanic Freemason. It's more that I'm a wannabe satanic Freemason. So I don't even get to be all the way. That's fine. Here I am trying my best. And I'm still stuck at the wannabe stage. So, to kind of, I have no idea to what the black, thank you, half hawk, half man. I have no idea to what the black hole sun refers other than the song. Now, it could be part of a ladder rite in a later degree. I know that in the idea of as above, so below, there's this symbol like a black sun shining down. Well, you're not wrong, Smokey. Or sorry, you're not wrong, Cold. I don't have a great knowledge of the occult. Occult as meaning, hidden. But I think one of the things I try to emphasize on this stream is Freemasonry is not related to the occult, except in the sense that the term occult means hidden. And there are aspects of Freemasonry that are private. There are many reasons to keep things private, not just, everybody always infers nefarious purposes to keeping things private. But you keep things private or hidden or occult for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes it's a way to maintain the bonds or strengthen the bonds of brotherly love between different members of groups. Sometimes it's for security reasons. Sometimes it's for monetary reasons or economic reasons. Sometimes it's for familial reasons. So the idea that being a Freemason, you need a knowledge of the occult is just not the case. And as someone who's been a Freemason for 20 years, attended over 1,000 meetings, been a worshipful master 3 times, as well as currently a worshipful master, I think, I can say clearly the extent to which the occult is or is not necessary for a successful Masonic experience. So, half hawk, half man. So here's what I will say about your question. First of all, in my experience, as well as the experience of lodges I visited and know, there is no reluctance to include members who are homosexual, openly or otherwise. Um, there may be some who I guess are maybe more afraid, which is fine, or closeted, or pick your term. I've known, I think at this point, three homosexual Freemasons, and they're all brothers of mine and great people, and I love them to death. Um, and Freemasonry should welcome and be welcoming to, the LGBTQ community. Having said that, human nature is human nature. I have no doubt that there are Masonic lodges that exist in different parts of the world where there may be more, prejudice against homosexual people. I wish that wasn't the case. All I can say is, like I said, every lodge I've been to or been a part of welcomes men, of all sexual orientations, as it should be. So yeah, and like I said, I've known two Masons who are actually married to, in homosexual marriages, married to other men. And in one case, a couple of cases brought their husbands to Masonic banquets or special events. And then I knew one who was not married, but was part of the LGBTQ community. So I've not seen that reluctance, but I can't imagine it doesn't exist because Freemasons are people. People have all the prejudices. It's just human nature to be prejudiced sometimes, unfortunately. Um, so Cold, I'm not ignoring you. I see what you're saying. I just want to answer Half Hawkman's question because it's a quick one. What is a worshipful master? Worshipful master is basically he's like the CEO of the lodge. He is the person who basically is responsible for administration of the lodge for at least a year. It can be longer. Um, but he makes sure the lodges run properly. Meeting minutes get sent, like all the administrative and social and fraternal and ritual tasks that need to be done in a Masonic context. He's the person who makes sure it's done. And he's called the worshipful master. Terms typically last for a year, at which point you become the immediate past master. But it can last longer if there's nobody coming up to take the space. And you can be a worshipful master, for many years. It should be Half Hawkman, but it's not. I wish it was because it might encourage Masons or worshipful masters to be more dedicated to the job, and to be able to dedicate more time to it. Um, but it's not. There are some lodges that may provide like a stipend to cover some expenses because as a worshipful master you have to travel to different meetings and stuff, and sometimes you have to travel far. But at most I've ever heard is like $50 a month to be the worshipful master, which is not. It is a ton of work, and it's all done on a voluntary basis. And I think that's something that we need to examine because you can't expect a worshipful master to dedicate hours of his time and not be financially compensated. What he's going to do then is put in the bare minimum amount of time to being a worshipful master and dedicate the rest of it to, his actual job that pays the bills. Again, it depends on the lodge. Most lodges don't, but a few do. But the vast majority do not, in my experience. So Challenger, welcome back. Once again, I'm not quite willing to call you a troll yet, although you're kind of getting there a little bit. Challenger, the term worshipful, it does not refer to worshiping anything rather other than maybe the office. The example that I often give is our mayor in Windsor, as the mayor everywhere, are addressed as your worship, right? You're not worshiping the mayor. you're worshiping perhaps the office of mayor, but our mayor is called your worship. Um, in some places, judges can be called your worship. Worshipful or your worship, it's just an old title that references kind of the idea of the office. Um, so Well, yeah, like the same way they talk about the president, right? When you say you want to be respectful of the president of the United States, you're even if you don't like the president and you think he's doing a bad job, what you're respectful of is the office of the president of the United States. You respect the office, not the man. Just like you respect the title, not the man. In the military, what they'd say is you um, you salute the rank, you don't salute the man, right? Because the office changes. So I'm worshipful master for 1 year, but then when I leave, somebody else takes the worshipful master position. Now you can keep the honorific worshipful in the same way. Once you're prime minister, when you leave, you're still considered honorable in your title, but you know that's kind of the honorific that references the office you held. Feeling or showing reverence or adoration, right? But the key is not for the person, for the office that they either hold or held. So, and thank you for being here, Half Hawk. I hope that I answered your questions well. So, cold. If you had important knowledge, it's immoral to keep it a secret. Freemasons sell their soul. So, how would you define important knowledge? Because I've never. So, for example, if in my Masonic lodge that somebody were to um, let's say I've committed a murder, I do not get to keep that a secret. I have to, because it would be immoral to keep that a secret. I need to tell the authorities, right? But that's the difference. Um, that there's a difference between, what am I trying to say? That type of knowledge, which we do keep, which we do not keep private. The idea of you find out somebody's been committing crimes of some sort, that goes to the authorities, as it should. But, when it comes to Masonic ritual, there's nothing that will or will not affect anybody outside of the lodge. And in that case, the reason you keep it private is to strengthen the bonds of brotherhood. So I've given this example a bunch of times. I think he might be gone too, but if he's not, I'll keep talking. If you have a family recipe that get passed down from grandfather to father to son to grandson, the reason that you keep that private is because you want to maintain the bonds of brotherhood between, or the familial bonds between the family members. If you share it, that affects your connections to the past and future of your family. So that is why you maintain the privacy of it, not out of any concern that there's anything immoral or necessary for people to know. But Challenger, Oslander Rouse, if you're still there, cold, let me know what the black hole sun is, because like I said, I've never heard of it, but there's plenty of things I don't know. So I could very well not be aware of something. It wouldn't be the first time I've not known about something. So going back to why can't we do big things anymore? So again, using this article, right, you see that I think Neil deGrasse Tyson's awesome. I want to have him talk at the Masonic Temple one day. We absolutely have within our society examples of it is a song, right? In the past, during the greatest generation, you have, which is a time when Freemasonry was growing rapidly, you also had Americans engaging in these vast, almost seemingly superhuman projects: interstate highway system, Apollo missions, Hoover Dam, Manhattan projects, Normandy invasion, Empire State Building, Social Security. And the men and people who were involved in all of those projects were also existing at a time when Freemasonry was growing rapidly and as big as it ever was. I don't view those things as a coincidence. First of all, why don't you denounce Satan? Well, I don't denounce Satan because I don't believe Satan exists. I'm not religious in that sense. I believe in a supreme being, but I am not one of the Christian interpretation. So it would be, I don't know what the word is. I would feel like I was being disingenuous if I denounced Satan. What I will say is I will denounce. I mean, people can do whatever they want, but I would denounce Satanism based on what I understand of its religious precepts. It doesn't seem like a very good path to take based on what I've seen of it. And actually, I've told this story before, but there was once a Satanist who contacted me, said that he was interested in joining Freemasonry, said that he was a Satanist. And I met with him. I talked to him about what Freemasonry is. And based on that, he said he did not want to join because he felt that Freemasonry was not compatible with Satanism. So take that for whatever it's worth. In terms of denouncing Satanism. That can happen quite a bit. You're not wrong. You're not wrong about that, but that's okay. I have not, but I heard it's really funny. So I do kind of want to watch it because I've heard it's pretty hilarious. I used to watch a lot more South Park. I wonder if South Park ever made fun of Freemasons. I kind of hope they did. I think that would be really cool. It'd make me laugh if they did, and I'd feel honored. I know they made fun of Scientology a few times, and they made fun of Mormonism, which has Masonic connections. So there's that. That is true. A lot of people use them in that way, but I think the term denouncing Satan means denouncing the actual biblical figure. And like I said, I believe in a supreme being, but I'm very hesitant to necessarily believe in any particular religious doctrine. Is there an official Freemason food? Oh, you've opened up a can of worms with that one, Underground Thomas. So the joke in Freemasonry is that the official Masonic food is green beans, because at every meeting it seems like somebody's serving green beans, and so that became the kind of running gag that the official food for Freemasonry is green beans. Pancake breakfast is another well-known Masonic food because Freemasons are always organizing pancake breakfasts. Okay. South Park has featured Freemasonry in several episodes, often portraying them as a secret society with elaborate rituals and a hidden influence on the world. The show uses Freemasonry as a source of satire and humor, often depicting their meetings and activities in comical and exaggerated manner. Cartman's mom is a dirty slut. This episode features a parody of Freemasonry with the boys infiltrating a secret meeting of the ancient mystic top secret society, which is heavily implied to be Freemasons. 201, season 14. These episodes involve a plot to expose the Prophet Muhammad and feature a group of religious figures who are also revealed to be Freemasons. Mystery of the Urinal Deuce, season 16. This episode includes a scene with Freemasons meeting again, highlighting their secretive nature and rituals. Well, there you go. Underground Thomas, big things aren't necessarily good things. That's very true as well, and that's something to keep in mind. Nor does it mean small things are necessarily bad things. That's something we want to keep in mind as well. And I think that's a really good and valuable point to keep in mind also. Right? When it comes to Freemasonry, or when it comes to doing big things, just because we're doing a big thing in and of itself, it's the why are we doing it? What do we hope to gain from it? What do we hope to benefit from it? But there are a lot of things that could be very big, that could be very helpful, that I think we as Freemasons are sometimes hesitant to do, just like we in society are very hesitant to do. And some of the reasons for that is we have a much more of a collective but yet individual society, and Freemasons are part of that society too, right? Today's technology, which allows us to connect and communicate directly with each other, makes us less inclined to centralizing themes and collective action. If I am a Freemason and I propose a very big project for my Masonic Lodge, and I want to see my Masonic Lodge engage in a very big project, if everybody in the lodge is not really connected to each other, but rather through technology are connecting to, people around the world or people on Facebook or people on social media, are we going to be able to highly motivate them to focus on a collective good when they're so connected individually through their social media and their technology, right? And in the paradox, the more connected we get, the more divided we become. Again, as Freemasons, if we're not all connected to each other in our Masonic lodges, but rather connected outside of it through technology, will that result in a more divided lodge? And if you have a more divided lodge, will that result in, less willingness to take on big major projects? You are correct, Underground Thomas. You are absolutely correct there. Right? And the issue with not being able to have big projects in Freemasonry is big projects are synonymous with ambition, confidence, two things that I would say are missing both in Freemasonry and in national life in Canada, US. You need big things. You need to be able to do big things to have ambition, to have confidence. Right? Also, another reason we tend not to have these big major projects in Freemasonry is because big major projects require a great deal of time, effort, and sacrifice. And part of the issue is, you could argue we in society, quote unquote, have gotten too soft. Pick your term. I don't know if I agree with that 100% or not. But there's an argument you could be made that we're too ready to give up when things get hard, or not willing to work hard or make sacrifices to achieve a very big thing. Either because we as a society are going more soft, or one of the reasons I'm always talking about the economic climate in a community. If somebody is struggling, working 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week just to get by, if they feel economically insecure or unstable, if they're having family issues, if they just feel that they have less and less time for things outside of work and family, even if they can make it to a Masonic meeting, are they going to be willing to dedicate themselves to big projects that require the sacrifice of several years, several hours, could be financial sacrifice, donate to something? I mean, it's really, really tough to kind of expect that from people in, the modern economic climate. Um, and big has gotten harder. There is, for example, Masonic building projects. There are more regulations than ever before, it feels like. There are more levels of government bureaucracy. There's more funding requirements. There's more checks. That doesn't mean that, again, those are bad things. Sometimes those are necessary, and often they're necessary for the safety of workers as well as the safety of the community. But that doesn't mean that it presents another potential, another way that people will be potentially less interested in dedicating themselves to Masonic efforts, right? Because there's so much additional work that needs to be done, that needs to go into it. And nowism, right? Big projects, big Masonic projects, or any type of big project, requires patience and a belief in history. How many Freemasons have the patience to engage in a big project that could take several years? Or, even a decade, let's say. Like the Detroit Masonic Temple took approximately 10 years to build. If we were to try to create a project in 2025 that would not be finished until 2035, would we be willing to do so, right? Would we be willing to sacrifice for 10 years to build a new building? And that was very common back in the day. Many Masonic buildings took years, if not decades, to complete. You're a good man, Smokey. That's very hard. Right? You have instant downloads, endless channels, movies on demand, trained us to get what we want when we want. All of these forces satisfy consumer desires, make us less able to invest in tough, unglamorous, inconvenient things, especially if they take time. And I can tell you for the Next 100 Years project that I did in Freemasonry at the Windsor Masonic Temple, it was a 5-year project of often 40 hours a week on that project. Sadly, Smokey, it can't just be you, which is, again, one of those things. It's like, it's not that there aren't people who want to do big things. It's, do we have a sufficient number of people who want to do big things, right? That's the challenge. Underground Thomas, there has been endless discussions on that as an idea. The idea of, should Masonic groups maintain and keep their very large, very expensive, often to operate buildings? I find generally those who are more Freemasonry as a community organization tend to be much more in favor of maintaining them, whereas those who view Freemasonry as a initiatic experience and more esoteric tend to be much more akin to divesting of buildings and having a much smaller footprint. Welcome, BRM, Black Raven Medication. Thank you for being here. I hope that you are doing well. Well, and that's the, do you have ideas on how to encourage and keep up project momentum? I wish I did. I mean, part of it is It's the challenge is so much of it can be outside of Masonic control, right? Like trying to keep you can try to encourage people to keep up ambition through or the energy through mindfulness exercises. But if John Smith loses his job and needs to move away, all the mindfulness exercises in the world won't get him to come back. SP81, welcome. Thank you for being here. I don't know what you said there, but I hope you hit the like and subscribe button. I mean, Underground Thomas is absolutely correct. People do need to maintain a project long term. People need to feel that they are actively contributing and their ideas are heard, which can be an issue in Freemasonry, where oftentimes you have older members can sometimes take a more negative attitude towards kind of new young Masons desiring to try some different projects. Let me see if I can find it though. That is so gamification and motivation talks about what you mentioned there, Underground Thomas. Some people are motivated through, well, let's see, one thing at a time. That's true, but you might not be what you want them to be saying. But you're not wrong about that, Dad. You're not wrong about that. So when people have different core drives, and this goes to your motivation in general, Black Raven, right? The motivation to take on a big project, right? Sometimes you can motivate them through epic meaning, through the idea of this project, this big project, there's an epic meaning behind it. And that was how, for many years, they motivated people in the past to these big projects, right? There was an epic meaning to building the pyramids. There's an epic meaning to building the interstate roadway network. There's an epic meaning to, Social Security, to lifting people out of poverty, to, in Freemasonry, there was an epic meaning to building the Detroit Masonic Temple, the Windsor Masonic Temple, the Texas Masonic Retirement Community. There was an epic meaning to Freemasonry itself. If you can communicate that epic meaning to people through, rhetoric, through persuasion, that is a big way to help maintain motivation. But then the idea of people needing to feel, or the second core, development and accomplishment, same thing, right? There's an epic meaning to developing and building. There's an epic amount of accomplishment, or it is an accomplishment to build the Detroit Masonic Temple, to build the Windsor Masonic Temple, to build the Texas Masonic Retirement Community, to grow Masonic numbers, right? That is an accomplishment that you can use to motivate people. I'll give that quote in just 1 second, Underground Thomas, because I don't want to forget about that one. But then, core drive 3, empowerment and creativity of feedback. Right? This drive relates to the ability for a member to make meaningful choices and otherwise feel empowered to make creative choices within the activity, or ownership and possession. Right? One reason that, for example, America was able to do the Interstate Highway Program as a big major accomplishment is because every American, I believe, felt that they had a certain level of ownership of it. Yes, their tax dollars went towards it, but everyone with a car could drive on it, could get from coast to coast. They had ownership of this project. In Freemasonry, if you have a project, but the lodge doesn't feel as though there is ownership of it or towards it, they are less likely to engage with it. And then empowerment. If you want people to engage in a big project, but you don't give them the authority to actually do the project, or people are always kind of second guessing or taking responsibilities away, that is going to demotivate them very quickly. You need to give them the opportunity and then trust them to make the choices that they need to make in order to see the project through to completion. I got the idea for this discussion on big things from one of my favorite television shows, The West Wing, and one of my favorite episodes of The West Wing called 100,000 Airplanes. It's all about the basic premise of it. If you don't know, The West Wing is about the White House and is about a fictional presidential administration where Sam Seaborn, basically they're writing the State of the Union, and the speechwriter, Sam Seaborn, wants to include in the State of the Union a line about curing cancer, which is a big thing, right? And basically he is talked into removing the line because everybody says to him it's just too big of a thing to try to do. It's just not possible for the government to do it. And at one point he gives this quote where he's talking about why he thinks the government should try to do big things. But I think you could apply this to government agencies, you could apply this to corporations, you could apply this to Freemasonry, communities. Anybody can take this philosophy of what is possible, right? And the quote was, in 1940, our armed forces weren't among the 12, our armed forces weren't among the 12 most formidable in the world. But obviously we're going into a big war. And Roosevelt said the US would produce 50,000 airplanes in the next 4 years. Everyone thought it was a joke. And it was, because it turned out we produced 100,000 airplanes. Right? So it's absolutely possible, in my opinion, to do big things. I think it's much harder today for all the reasons I've mentioned. And I think it's much harder for the same reason it's so hard, as Underground Thomas says, it's so hard for society to build interstate highways, subways, and canals. It's so hard for Freemasons to build, to engage in a 10-year project to build a new Masonic temple, to build a new home for the aged, a new care home, to grow our numbers to the same levels as they were in 1959, to take on a project that lasts 4 or 5 years and let's say cost a couple $100 million in today's money, right? Because Freemasons are busier than ever before and more accustomed to getting things immediately, which makes them less inclined to sacrifice for something that might not happen right away. They are less connected to their Masonic lodges and more connected to their phones. I know there's irony of me saying that. The rules and regulations surrounding buildings have grown more cumbersome and harder. But it's still worth trying to do some of these big things because it increases confidence in our Masonic lodges. It demonstrates ambition moving forward. It gets the community interested in Freemasonry, which as a consequence of that interest, you can then potentially either grow the relevance and the numbers of Freemasons. It gets Freemasons feeling better about their lodge and more interested in returning to lodge. It provides opportunities for socialization, purpose, things a lot of our members are missing. And it's just fun to succeed in doing things. And it creates a infrastructure that will exist for, decades, centuries to come, as in the Detroit Masonic Temple, as in the Texas Masonic Retirement Community. You know, it's still doing big things, the Texas Masonic Retirement Community, but the building of it in and of itself was a huge thing. And as a consequence of it, every year, hundreds of Masons, including those who would otherwise be homeless or on the street, have access to safe, clean housing, medical care, food, and all the things they need, as well as their widows, to live good lives. You know, and again, the way that we motivate our Masonic lodges or Masons to engage in these big things, I think goes back to the idea of gamification. We explain to them the epic meaning of the big event or the big thing or the big project. We provide with them a sense of accomplishment, not just for when the project is done, but all the steps along the way that help them, you know, with that project and help them find success in that project. And we give them motivation. We give them ownership over the. We give them motivation in order to, or we give them ownership over the project. Let them make decisions. Sometimes that means they may fail in a particular decision, but they'll learn. They'll correct. The beautiful thing about a big project is a single failure does not ruin the whole thing. It's a big project, right? That means you can fail here and there and still accomplish the goal. I failed a million times while I was doing the For the Next 100 Years project, but I still managed at the end of the day to find success. We allow them to be creative, and we give them an opportunity. Oh, Smokey, you get up every day even though my body doesn't want me to. Yeah, I would find that very motivating as well. The fact that you were stabbed 30 times and still get up every day is something that I think you should be incredibly proud of. So keep up the great work. I think you should be proud of yourself for that. Welcome. If you're just joining us, please take a moment, hit that like and subscribe button. Yes, get some tea with honey for your wife if she's still feeling ill. That's one of my kind of what's the word I'm looking for? One of my Masonic one of my cures is trying to, tea with honey. But guys, I have to run. I wish I could stay a little bit longer, but I have to take care of something quickly. I will be back on tonight at 1 a.m. I hope that you found this an enjoyable stream. Thank you guys so much. I'll be back again tonight, 1 a.m. for another just general hangout chat. All right, guys, I will see everybody soon. Thank you guys all for being here. And yeah, Smokey, you should be really proud of everything you've accomplished. I can't believe, like I said, you are a very tough and very strong person to have been stabbed 30 times and still be getting up. So good for you. All right, guys, I will see everybody later. We'll be back tonight.